Well, hello and welcome to another movie review by Movie Burnett Entertainment. My name is Stephen, and today I'm going to be talking about Back to the Future Part 3, which completed the trilogy in 1990. This film was directed by Robert Zemeckis and also written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, starring Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Mary Steenburgen, Thomas F. Wilson and Leah Thompson. I wasn't fortunate to see part 2 in the cinema and would have to wait along with my brother for the VHS release almost a year later. It has positives though, as I will explain shortly. The sheer excitement and anticipation of seeing where and what adventures Marty, played by Michael J. Fox, and the Doc, played by Christopher Lloyd, would take next after the successful original film, so our two main characters travel to the future and then back to 1955 with a different angle on the story, and then shockingly left us, the audience, gasping as Doc and the DeLorean was struck by lightning. I waited 5 long years to see part 2, but thankfully the timing of the release of the middle part of the trilogy on VHS coincided with the cinematic release of part 3, and our folks decided to treat us to the cinema, which back in the 1980s and 1990s was a rare treat for our family. To build a picture, we rented part 2 on the Friday, rewatched it about 2 or 3 times on the Saturday, and on the Sunday our parents announced we would be going to the ABC cinema in Glasgow to watch the third and concluding part of the Back to the Future trilogy on the Sunday evening. The classic clock tower lightning scene opens the movie, which part 2 left us with Doc collapsing in a heap after seeing Marty return to 1955, after just watching him go back to the future seconds before. At this point I think it's fair to say that the opening score by Alan Silvestri is beautiful, and some have said it's a precursor to the Forrest Gump theme, which I can see the similarities in. That wide shot of Doc's mansion, the Procter & Gamble mansion, is magnificent as the Hill Valley storm eases and we see from a distance Marty taking the unconscious Doc indoors to rest. How someone of Marty's stature managed this is a mystery, but nevertheless the camera floats around the living room of the mansion, which we all remember from the original details, and it's here I have always been impressed with the finer details of the opening scenes. The pictures on the wall, the fireplace, the organ, and of course the toy car and the fire bucket that was used as an experiment. Mostly the thing that impressed me even more was the clock hanging in the bathroom above the toilet, which Doc mentioned briefly in the original movie. When he was hanging the clock, he slipped and hit his head in a division of the flux capacitor, and as they say, with no pun intended, the rest is history. Doc's misbelief and reaction in the opening sequences are so funny and reminiscent of his initial reactions to Future Boy. Thankfully Marty has a letter from 1885 Doc that the Western Union guy handed to him at the tail end of part 2. Here both characters discover where the buried DeLorean is and manage to rebuild it, a lot of its components using 1955 equivalents. The most shocking part of the opening scene is Marty and Doc discovering that there is a tombstone near where the DeLorean was buried in a nearby cemetery and bears the name Emmett L. Brown, who is the Doc, of course. That is, of course, the catalyst for Marty to get back in the time machine and go back to 1885 to save his friend. Arriving in the scenic Old West, the locations have been used countless times to recreate that period in American history, and the movie does it so well. One of the things I love about Part 3 is it's very stripped down and organic compared to the dark and tech-minded Part 2. It is here we realise that after rupturing the fuel line, Marty is out of gas, and there isn't going to be a gas station around until the early part of the 20th century. The scenario is almost similar to the first on how they are going to get back to the future, and figuring that out is the main storyline. Just like the original, there are going to be obstacles in the way, in the vein of our familiar Tannen villain, this time Buford Mad Dog Tannen, played by Thomas F. Wilson, and finally a love interest in Clara Clayton, played by Mary Steenburgen, for the Doc, which is handled very sweetly by Zemeckis and Gale, and is very believable thanks to the acting talents of Lloyd and Steenburgen. In fact, I read somewhere this would be Christopher Lloyd's first on-screen kiss. If I was being honest, I would have to say that Part 3, although I love it, is probably the weakest of the 3. I think the only reason for that is because we know the story is coming to a conclusion, and to be fair, the ending is satisfactory. You can't help wonder why they stopped at 3 when the possibilities are endless. To be fair though, if you've watched these films a lot of times, you do happen to notice that the common theme throughout the Marty waking up confused scenario, a Tannen incarnation and his henchmen chasing Marty through the town, a Tannen incarnation falling into manure. The reoccurring scenes probably would become overbearing and stale, I suppose. The stellar cast again doesn't disappoint, and the introduction to Mary Steenburgen adds emotional weight to the story, and also adds to the drama and urgency of the final act. I mentioned this before, if part 1 was Christopher Lloyd's movie, part 2 was certainly Tom Wilson's movie, and it's beyond doubt that the third part belongs to Christopher Lloyd. Michael J. Fox's Marty was always the master of ceremonies character, almost the audience member's point of view. Going back to Wilson, his mad dog is brilliantly executed in that dumb Tannen way that will have you laughing out loud at his stupidity, but also like his ancestors, is that the right word? future ancestors? Anyway, this incarnation is just as devious and dangerous also. I mentioned Alan Silvestri earlier, and I have to say that this score in this film is a little underwhelming until we get a bit of drama. There are a few moments in there from the composer that are memorable, but like the original film, that is more remembered for Huey Lewis. The third part is remembered for the contribution from ZZ Top and their single released Double Back, which has a nice 1880s version in the film, which also appears in during the dance scenes at the opening of the clock tower. It has to be said, for me, Silvestri's contributions are more defined in the middle part of this trilogy. Zemeckis and Gill have always stated that they never intended to make sequels to the 1985 original, but it has to be said that I'm glad they did. I also have to take my hat off to them for stopping that 3 films. I know part of me would love to see more adventures with these characters, but it's admirable for the filmmakers to quit while they were ahead. The scenery in this film is breathtaking, and the locations were also authentic for this period in time. The spectacular train wreck at the movie's climax is something to be seen, and how they blended the DeLorean passing over the bridge at the end was seamless. Again, the Vista Glide system is used, but very briefly, and one of the surprises for me was how watered down Lea Thompson's appearance was as Maggie McFly. Thompson's ever-presence throughout the first 2 movies is almost sidelined, but perhaps because they introduced the Clara character, and I can understand why this decision was made. Overall, Back to the Future Part 3 is a must-see film, but only if you have watched the previous 2 films. I do think this instalment is a worthy and satisfactory conclusion to the franchise, and I do hope that the talk of remakes remains just rumour and not reality. The 30th anniversary of the franchise has witnessed the cast and crew reuniting and celebrating the occasion, which is always nice to see, and also to see them all get along after all this time. The actors certainly look like they are embracing the attention and the memory of these films and looking back. My brother and I came out of the cinema aged 14 and 9, very happy with what we had just witnessed, and I can't recommend this film enough.
Remember guys, if you're enjoying the content we're putting out, then do subscribe to us on YouTube at Movie Burner Entertainment and on iTunes and Google Play at the Movie Burner Podcast, whilst also giving us a little follow on Facebook and Twitter at Movie Burners. You can also catch up with all the latest reviews we're putting out on the Movie Burner blog at movieburnerentertainment.org. Until the next time, goodbye.